Hi everyone. I just wanted to talk to you again about like ABA and like all the craziness in ABA. So basically, last time I was talking to you about some of the crazy stuff on Reddit and how they just don't keep things clean and how they expect everybody else to clean. That's something you should definitely set a boundary with about as far as your responsibilities and duties. Like it should be exclusively like to your client that you're working directly with, that you only clean any messes like food spillage or like of course pick up toys or like Play-Doh or like kinetic sand. By the way, like for ABA, working with kids who are on the spectrum, autism spectrum disorder, usually I was working with kids between the ages of 2 all the way up to like 13. So they play with these different toys, and like you want to just clean up the area, you know, that you were sitting at with your client, and any messes that they make. And you can even like get your client to like pick up toys and like sweep or whatever if they're capable of that. Um, and wipe down the table with disinfectant wipes or whatever. But unfortunately, you have these crazy companies now who are basically expecting people to clean their building for them instead of hiring like a janitorial service. Also, you have like major theft of wages. Like they don't want to pay you to do stuff anymore. A lot of companies don't want to pay you for a full 40 hours, so they'll try to do like 30 to 35 hours. They definitely don't want to pay you overtime, and they're not smart enough to figure out like how to get funding where they don't have to um, bill the insurance company. So I've discussed this before. Common sense is common sense, but clearly common sense ain't so common. You as a company can have both for profit and non for profit, nonprofit. So for profit and nonprofit in a singular company. You do not have to rely specifically only on billing the insurance company. Therefore, you can have funds for other employees or like titles outside of like behavior technician and BCBA and clinical director or whatever. But there's a major theft of wages. They don't want to pay you the way that you are supposed to be paid. Specifically, there were incidences at the previous company where I worked where they were like changing up the itemized list of payment. You know how like you get holiday pay versus like mileage versus like your actual hours, and specific like hours with the client versus hours cleaning whatever. That like multiple people complained that they did not get paid properly. So I would double check on that. But not only there, like it wasn't just in ABA. Like I even worked for another company that was doing in-home therapy, mental health therapists, and serious theft of wages, because while they paid you a salary, that meant that they didn't owe you overtime. And so in the process, we were working 16, 18, maybe even 20-hour days. And it wasn't just me, like you literally would go into the field, drive up to an hour away from the office in any direction, north, south, east, west. And so you really had to plan your day. Like, okay, today I'm going north, tomorrow I'm going east, the third day I'm going west, and then the fourth day I'm going south. And then, the last day you can and then you still have meetings, all kinds of crazy meetings to do. So it was like individual family. Then you had like ACRA and TFCBT, trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy on top of that. And don't forget wraparound services and like meeting with their probation officers and go and see them at the juvenile detention centers so you're running your car down, you're running yourself down, and then after being in the field all day, running sessions, talking to everybody in the community about this kid, this client, like you also have to go back to the office and do all of this paperwork. And you're like, okay, so that's another 8 hours. And they're like, the insurance company needs this information. What is the barrier to you getting this done? And you're like, the fact that I had to drive there, chase clients down that weren't there, wait for them to see if they were going to actually respond to text calls and whatnot, and then chase somebody else down. That's the barrier. So me and other like coworkers were there till like maybe midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to do all the paperwork from progress reports to CRPs, crisis response plans, to treatment plans, to what they call criticals, because client had an issue that required us to go out, which also meant that we were like on call. And that meant like, your kid was like suicidal or homicidal, even if the parent was, like, you had to go out and assess and like basically diffuse the crisis situation. And it was crazy. So in ABA you experience crisis situations as well, like, but these dummies in ABA companies, they don't even like create the CR, well, they call them CMPs, crisis management plans, and put them into the system so you can like read up and be like, okay, this is how I manage this kid when they are upset, when they are in crisis. So I know you're like, wait, a 2-year-old goes into crisis? Yes. These kids who are on the spectrum are not verbal. So they don't come to you and say, hey, I'm hungry. They just slap you in the face. They bite you, they scratch, they kick, they pull your hair, they pinch, they throw things at you, they headbutt you. Sometimes they engage in self-injurious behavior where they bite themselves or scratch themselves or bang their heads against things. So you have to know what to do, how to block and move, and redirect behaviors. But unfortunately, they're not giving people the proper training that they need in a extensive amount of time. I can say one thing about the company that um, I was working as a mental health therapist and doing in-home therapy. They trained the mess out of you, but that was because they had clients that were suicidal and homicidal, and they just didn't want the liability if they did not train you properly for everything. So we were constantly being trained, but not in ABA. ABA be like, I'm gonna just throw you in there because this is a little kid, and we just hope you don't pick up the kid and toss him across the room in the process because you weren't properly trained how to deal with them. Often we are asked to just take the hit and not respond, which can be quite effective sometimes. However, companies are very culturally incompetent, is in like they don't understand that people coming from different cultural backgrounds will not accept that as a methodology. um and you have to respect that. You have to respect your employees as much as you respect your clients, and they don't respect the employees at all. They see everybody the same, they want everybody to get paid the same, and it is like just nothing but psychopathy there. I mean, these people are straight psychopaths, and I can just tell you from personal experience, the last company I just worked for, they were literally trying to have the best performing people paid at the lowest rate, and they wanted to keep people there. It was not just me, it was two of my other coworkers. They did this deliberately. We were working towards becoming BCBAs, receiving our hours as BCBA trainees. And this person was purposely making sure, like, oh, they're not going to get all their hours. And we don't care if they never get it. If they're too stupid to figure it out, that's on them. And this is how unethical they are. They don't care nothing about you. They only care about the bottom line, which is the dollar. Um, they're only going to care about the safety and the well-being of the client if, like, somebody's going to complain and be like, wait a minute now. And they'll tell you like, we're so um concerned about the safety and well-being of the client. That's top priority. Well, then you should make sure you properly train people. Like, you should be training them for at least 1 month to deal with an aggressive child, or a child who has like severe, like, self-injurious behaviors. It can be very stressful. It can be very taxing mentally and emotionally. These children, even though they're small, they can cause serious injury, especially if a child elopes. Well, you can't just let them run out into oncoming traffic. Like, oh well, they ran away and we don't know where they are. No, you're responsible for that child, so you have to run after them, which means you could trip and fall, sprain something, fracture something, break something, in the process of trying to you know stop them from eloping. Which means you really have to like anticipate the behavior and have a strong CMP, a strong sense of like who your client is, and what works and what doesn't with them as far as preferences. What is their reinforcement, which we tend to use food and toys with the kids, as well as verbal praise or like activities, um which also becomes another issue. Like, parents are like, oh, we don't want them to have all of that junk food, but then, like, let me tell you something, apples and oranges and grapes ain't gonna be like a huge reinforcement to a small child. So, like, we need the junk food, but I understand like giving it to them in smaller amounts. I wish the companies that made the junk food did, manufacture it in tiny bites. So they could not have like an overabundance of it. Um, but that just goes back to like constantly doing preference assessments and making sure you're building rapport with your kid. You continue to have that bond with them and play with them. So it's not always the food that is so reinforcing, but like a variety of toys or just play activities are super useful and reinforcing. But basically, these people pay so low in the field anyway. It's terrible. Which brings me to my next point. I know they were talking about, like, oh, talk about how much rent is in the state of Louisiana. Well, where I was living at the time in Covington, our rent was like, at one point it was like, when we first started, it was like 1,600, and of course eventually it went up to like 1,700 a month for like a 2-bedroom 2-bathroom apartment. And I was sharing that with my mom, so she brought in the extra income. Now, I was only making, I said like they'll pay you anywhere from like as little as $13, but I was getting paid 21 and I had to advocate for the $21 per hour because the top level that they wanted to pay me was like 19, and I was like, no, like absolutely not, because I know I'm not guaranteed a 40-hour work week. So if client's sick or the client's out and all that BS, um you lose hours, and that might mean you get sent home. So I was like, no, 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 baby. You're gonna pay me more because you can't guarantee me the hours. Um, but anyway, be careful, like with these ABA companies, particularly when you're signing on as like a BCBA trainee and you're trying to get your supervision hours so you can go sit for the exam. Also, not only that, like okay, the last issue I wanted to talk about was um the lack of insurance, because there's such high risk for some type of injury in this field. Like even though the companies will offer it, like you don't make enough to afford the insurance. So the insurance would be like $260 per month, and your check every month is like $2,000. And you still gotta make rent and everything else. And you're like, I I can't afford that. And you talking about this is just for a single person. This isn't even for like, a family, like one person. So that whole rich auntie bullcrap, like society lied to you. There is no rich auntie, who's just single and with no kids and just living a life. Um, they really didn't design the system to benefit women like that who are single. I swear to God, like if I had chosen to just have a baby randomly with some man, I would pretty much be better off than if I continued the way that I have, which is to be a single woman with no children. And it's really terribly sad, considering all the level of education that I have, which is I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in psychology, and then I went back to Florida Institute of Technology for a graduate certificate to become a BCBA, which is a board certified behavior analyst. And even with all three of those degrees, like people just don't pay what they're supposed to pay you. And I'm at a point in stage in my life when like, I'm about to be 45 next month on the 14th. This is January 2025. So, yeah, next month on the 14th, I'll be 45, single, no children, 3 degrees, broke as I don't know what. Ain't no rich auntie out here, never was rich. And these companies are just abusive. They're psychopaths. They're stealing from us. They're stealing all of our time, all of our energy, and they're not paying us properly. And it's hilarious. I'm going to just tell you this one last thing before I go. So, I did have a company contact me, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, you can finish your hours here. We'll pay you, blah, 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 blah." So I said, you know what? Let me hurry up and like Google them and see what they're all about. They already have class action suits against them because they didn't consider the full safety of the client, and their facilities weren't up to par, and they weren't training people properly. So go figure. Huh. I don't think so. They could offer me $10 million at this point. I would still probably turn them down because they're just psychopaths and I don't have time. God told me, go create your own company, like go create what you want to see in the world. And that is my intention. So, I hope you all are doing well and having a wonderful new year. Talk to you next time. Bye.